so much. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for being here at today's policy committee meeting. I appreciate all the board members that made time for this. I know it was a little wonky being on a Wednesday with graduations and such, but I felt like it was important with the AI discussion that we keep that momentum and have this meeting, so I really appreciate you being here. Mr. Haggerty is not going to be here. Chair Swanson, I understand, is going to pop in. I know he's got some work commitments, but he is supposed to be here for part of it. And I don't believe, Dr. King is not going to be here, and I don't think Ms. Rice is going to be here, but I appreciate those of you that are. So, and it won't be our final discussion by any stretch of the imagination. So. The first thing that we need to do is approve our minutes from May 26th. If I can get a motion for that.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. And this first set of policies, 1010, 2120, those two are on action tonight. We have heard them twice before. We heard them at the work session on April 7th and again on May 26th at the last policy committee meeting, so there's not any major changes. That Dr. Crane will ask you to walk us through those.
Sure.
Thank you.
As Ms. Edmonds said, these are on action for tonight. Per your motion at the May policy committee meeting, we wanted to bring in discussion with Neil. He and I thought these are going for action tonight, and we have an opportunity to see, for you to see the language that was added at your request, so that if there were any changes to be made, we could discuss them now instead of during action for first reading. So the changes that were requested at the May Policy Committee meeting for Policy 1010 occurred in item number 1 of the some of the most significant duties of the board in Policy 1010. Number 1, what was revised by the School Board Association was to add providing every student with the opportunity to receive a sound basic education. Staff added to make all policy decisions with that objective in mind as directed by law. And then per request, we've added the language from the Leandro case that defines, quote, sound basic education. So we've inserted a, quote, sound basic education, end quote, as defined by the North Carolina Supreme Court in Leandro v. State, 1997, is one that will provide the student with at least, colon. There are 4 items there. These come from the case. Mr. Haggerty sent us this language. We dropped it in, as you all discussed at the last meeting. Just wanted you to see it in place before first reading tonight. Happy to answer any questions.
Board members, do you have any questions? Yes, Dr. Judd.
Do you think it's important to state somewhere in here that we understand that Leandro was addressed in certain ways, but we're still keeping the language, or that still stands so it doesn't matter?
Yeah, I can address that. This is from the original Leandro opinion, which is still good law. What was overturned recently was basically all of the remedial efforts of the case, but this is still a legal requirement, and it's pretty much verbatim from the Leandro case.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, so again, this is on action for this evening already.
Yes.
So we're not going to take any further action in this committee meeting. And except I will tell you tonight at the board table, I will be asking for waiver of second reading for 1010 and 2120. Because again, this is the 3rd time that we've discussed these 2 things, and so I think we should just move on and get them implemented. But right now we can move on to 2120.
Sure. Policy 2120, the revision of the Code of Ethics policy. At the last meeting in May, we agreed that in item number 10, the committee agreed that the 2 hours of ethics education within 12 months of election or appointment would happen then, as well as again during every year of the term served. So that's an annual requirement. We did discuss adding the statutory language behind this, which is who provides the education. And so we've added ethics education may be provided by the North Carolina League of Municipalities, North Carolina Association of County Commissioners, North Carolina School Boards Association, the School of Government at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. We have added, as you will see underlined, the board attorney, because that is someone that the board has approved in the past to provide ethics education. And finally, the statutory language ends with, or other qualified sources at the choice of the board. So we've added that language. Neil, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
I guess just to, as Dr. Crane said, this is straight out of the statute. You all can, one option that you have is you can add to the list. So the statute sort of pre-approves, the School of Government, the School Boards Association. You could choose to pre-approve in your policy any other organizations, and you don't have to add the board attorney. We just thought that was a good addition since we have done that, provided that training in the past. And then the catch-all at the end, other qualified sources at the choice of the board, would require separate board action. So again, you can add to this list now, or in the future, you could entertain a request from a board member, take it up to the board. It have to be on a consent agenda item or an action item for the board.
Mr. Hershey?
So we would have to vote on every single one?
If you don't, if it's not on the list that's in the policy, you would need some sort of vote or board action, yes.
It can't be at the approval of
Or you could, that's right, you could
board
delegate.
leadership
Yes.
or the,
Yes, no, that's true. You could delegate the decision as well to a committee, to an individual.
We
So
don't
it
need
could be
to
the board
specify
chair.
that, though.
Sorry?
We don't need to specify which way we do it in this, do we?
I would say something in policy. So, this policy, if you accept this language, only these groups are pre-approved. You need separate board action. What we could do is say, instead of saying other choices at the other qualified sources at the choice of the board, it could say other qualified sources, as determined by the board chair or determined by the chair and superintendent and vice chair, whatever. A committee, you could delegate that decision to
So
some.
you just add instead of doing all that, or, so that way it's two options.
Right.
And just at the end of choice of the board, say, or approved by the
Yes.
Or just or the
chair.
chair?
Or
Yes,
approved
so
by the chair.
perhaps,
That way
or
you have
other
two-
qualified sources as determined by the board chair or the board,
Yes.
for example.
Yeah,
Right.
I had the same question because I wasn't interested in having to convene the board to approve an
Yeah.
entity to do training.
Yeah.
I mean, even if we tack that on to a regular
Right.
meeting, I just think
Right.
that's.
Yeah, if you all are comfortable just delegating that to the vice chair, to the chair, I mean, then obviously the full board could then, if the chair said no, and the board member said, well, I disagree, that
Yes.
could go to the full board then. So it might make sense to say as determined by the board chair or the full board. Or
Yeah.
And that if we say or,
Yes.
we have that option?
Yes, I think that would be it. So that would be other qualified sources. Instead of at the choice of the board, we would say as determined by the board chair or the board.
Ms. Caulfield?
Well, that kind of addresses what I was going to ask, is like, do we have an approved list, or how do we determine, like, the process of getting approved? But that kind of settles that.
That's a good thought, because otherwise it is, board action on just an ethics training year by year.
Yeah.
You have busy agendas anyway. If you all are comfortable with that, I think that's I could read the language back, but we could just make that one change. At the choice of the board would be deleted, and we would replace it with as determined by the board chair or the board.
Okay. I have another question, but I want to see, Ms. Caulfield, did you have a follow-up?
No, that's it.
Okay. Do you guys have, I'm good. Anything? Okay. So my other question is, assuming we adopt this and it's effective, after our vote this evening, if we waive second reading, would we work with Ms. Allen? Because I don't know that I've met my 2 hours, so I'm assuming that for the current board membership, if it's effective, starting tonight or tomorrow morning or however that works, that we would all need to work with Ms. Allen and the board chair to make sure that we're in compliance of it. Okay.
We'll make sure that she will share with every board member the number of hours that they have, that she's got cataloged, and then you know where you are.
Okay.
And just so I'm clear, your calendar year is December to November 30, correct? Or December when you take your oath or are sworn in through the following day before that December meeting. That is your year?
I look at it that way because we have an annual meeting every December, and even if there's no new membership, we still go through the process of electing the chair and vice chair.
So I'm clarifying for the group that when you say, I want to make sure I get mine done, you're not looking to get it done by June 30. It's not the school year. You know,
Right,
they
Correct.
have an academic year, your year as the terms, terms of your years start in December and run through the following year just prior to the annual meeting.
To the annual meeting. Mr. Ramey, do you have an opinion about how we qualify what the year is, the year of a term?
It's a good question. I don't think the statute says every 2 years, I believe. So I think it makes sense to track by the term. Your terms start at the organizational meeting. Like except when you're replacing a vacant position, that's generally when the terms would start.
Correct.
So I think that's right. And I guess then the question is, are you comfortable making this go into effect immediately such that that means that you now only have a few months to get your ethics training in the remainder of this year, or do you want to delay implementation?
All right. Yeah, Dr. Jen.
I did talk to, this might affect, what I'm about to say might affect what you just said. I did talk to Tyler about it. We had ethics training during the retreat in December. So, and I believe it was 2 hours, actually. We had the presentation, and Tyler believed that counted. So I think we'd be okay, even though we're putting it into effect now.
Oh, that's good.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that might moot that concern, and then
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Hershey?
So I would actually make it 2 hours every calendar year because we've had appointments at different times.
Yeah.
And then you get into this situation where you have a February appointment and I don't know when like
November.
November appointment. So to me, it would be just easier and cleaner to say every
Calendar year.
calendar
Yeah,
year.
that makes sense, and that's an easy clarification. We just insert calendar between every and year in that blue text there, so it'd say, and again, during every calendar year of the term.
Okay.
I think that helps clarify that.
And if it means like, because if you're elected in, it says when you're elected, so it doesn't say when you're sworn in, right?
So
Within 12 months of
election or
election.
appointment.
So the election is beginning of November, which is different from being sworn in.
Yeah, so you first have to get it, whether you're sworn in at the normal time or at an odd time to fill a vacancy, you have 12 months from that date to get your first
Yeah.
ethics training, and then after that, it's just once during the calendar year, you decide when, anytime between January 1 and December 31st.
Yeah. And if it overlaps a little, then
Yeah.
I think that's cleaner and safer.
Yeah.
Do we have consensus with that since they'll present it tonight? Of course.
Because
yeah.
because we usually get sworn in the beginning of December.
Right.
So, and then we go immediately into orientation and training and everything. So if you're taking that in December, you now have to take it again come January.
well, you have 12 months.
12 months from your first
Or in
one.
December to do it again.
So you're
tech-
saying calendar year, are you going school calendar
No.
year?
Right. 2020,
January.
like, for 2026, I got to take 2 years. For 2027,
2 hours.
2 hours, I'm sorry, 2 hours. 2028, 2 hours.
You would not have to do it
No,
back to back in
You wouldn't have to
December.
squeeze it in, and that, you have 12 months from when you're first appointed or elected.
And really, if you're on a normal election, if you just get the training in January, February, that covers you for your requirement within the first 12 months and that calendar year.
Yeah, that's right.
Dr. Crane, do you feel like you have what you need for this evening?
Yes, so I will bring for first reading your recommendations from today for item number 10 in the existing language. We'll say, beginning with the second line here, months of election or appointment to the board, and again, during every calendar year of the term served. And then in the second paragraph that's all highlighted in yellow, the end will say, or other qualified sources, as determined by the board chair or the board.
Thank you. And we'll discuss the next three. So 2010, 2300, and 2330, they are not, on tonight's agenda, but this is the third time that we will have discussed these. These three were also discussed at the work session on April 7th and again at the last policy meeting on May 26th. And we'll start with 2010.
Policy 2010 is titled Board and Superintendent Relations, and at the last policy committee meeting, when we discussed the revisions that were there, that you asked us to insert some language at the end of the first paragraph regarding board responsibilities. That paragraph prior ended with, the superintendent is responsible for the administration of the system of schools consistent with the board's policies. And the recommendation was given to staff to insert some language about the board's responsibilities there and make it parallel or evenly balanced there. So we pulled, in consultation with Neil, we found in Board Policy 1010, Board Authority and Duties, that the board is responsible for establishing general policies in keeping with the needs of the community and the requirements of state law, and performing the specific duties stated in Policy 1010, Board Authority and Duties, or otherwise imposed by law. So it points to Policy 1010 for Board Authority and Duties, and also is broad enough to include anything that is otherwise imposed by law. So like all the things that are in, 72 things that are in 115C-47, I believe that is. I think there's 72 things there now, 72 numbered items that are the responsibility of the board.
Thank you. And then I just wanted to make a comment. We had some discussion around the last paragraph about, the superintendent having to inform us of, when they have to speak to these elected bodies. It's not the press, not speaking events like at the chamber, or things like that. And I just thought it was important to state that again, to be clear that it's a pretty specific thing that is required. Does anybody have any questions or comments for 2010? Okay. So with this one, I would like to request a motion to waive second reading and put it on consent at the August 4th board meeting.
Motion to waive second reading and put on the consent agenda.
Or, excuse me, first and second reading.
Okay.
I have to correct that motion. First
Waive
and second
first
reading.
and second reading.
Yep, and put it on consent at the August 4th meeting.
So moved.
Second. Okay. We'll give it to Ms. Caulfield the second. Do you have a question? Go
Is
ahead.
there a reason we're not doing it at the July?
I think just to give folks a little more time.
Okay, that's fine.
With it, yeah. Does any further question or discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, great. And 2300?
There are two things to talk about here in Policy 2300, and sort of in conjunction or sort of arm in arm. We'll also take a look at Policy 2330. The first thing I'd like to address is at the bottom of page 2. Now, there is a section header called Specially Called Meetings. There is a statement that is struck at the end of that paragraph. That was an inadvertent strikeout. That was an error on my part. Did not intend to strike through that. It happened as part of striking through the paragraph below. I have my documents from both the April 7th board work session as well as the May 26th policy committee meeting. None of my notes talk about that section, this statement here at the end of this paragraph being struck. We did edit that. At the April 7 meeting, we looked at it and it said the board chair or superintendent may call a special meeting. I'm not sure where that was struck, but we can certainly insert that back where it belongs. The School Board Association language reads, as far as what we inserted, the board chair superintendent shall call a special meeting if a majority of the members of the board so requests.
And I would suggest that shall makes more sense than may in that context. It's not an odd, if a majority of the board members want a meeting, I don't think that should be up to the chair at that point.
All right, can you review that again, Dr. Crane? I apologize. I'm looking at D1.
Sure.
Just, yeah.
Neil, is that language fine with you? The
For which?
language,
It's the second, no, the third
board-
sentence, right?
the last sentence in D1.
Mm-hmm.
In the red
Yep.
Yes.
text?
The board chair or superintendent shall call a special meeting
Yeah.
if a majority of the members of the board so requests.
Yes, I think that's fine. That's the NCSBA language, and that makes logical sense. If majority of members want to have a meeting, the meeting should occur. So that I think that was just an inadvertent strikeout, and there's some editing, some format issues in the blue text, but that should go back, I believe.
Okay, does the rest of it stay? When necessary to conduct business, it cannot reasonably be, okay.
For the rest of that section, the red text there, correct me if I'm wrong, Dr.
Red.
Quinn, that's all NCSBA language. So this is basically just clarifying and updating to align with the NCSBA language, but it's not really a substantive change from what you have in your current policy, I don't believe. I mean, it's basically, the rule is still the same. This just defines the different types of special meetings that you can have, and it gets you in closer alignment with NCSBA for further updates. But it's essentially the same rule. The chair or the vice chair, if the chair is not available, may call special meetings. That's discretionary. If a majority of members want to have a special meeting, it shall be called.
I can pull a Word document up and put those revisions in there if that's helpful to see it in place. No? Okay.
All right, does anybody have any questions about 2300? I think that was the only,
No, there's one other. The other part of this policy that was being revised had to do with item number 6,
right.
about an item on a consent agenda being moved by the request of a board member to action. The recommendation from Neil is the language that you see in blue here. Any board member or the superintendent may move items from the consent agenda to the action agenda prior to the board approval of the agenda if notification is provided to the board and the superintendent by 12 noon on the Monday of the scheduled board meeting week. If such notification is not provided, an item may be moved from the consent agenda to the action agenda only by motion, second, and majority vote prior to adoption of the agenda, or by motion, second, and 2/3 vote following adoption of the agenda. My understanding of this language is that it accomplishes, the first part accomplishes what was the desire that was expressed, and that is to say that if the request is made to move from consent to action by 12 o'clock on Monday, the week of the board meeting, that will happen. If that does not happen, that time limit isn't met, it can still happen, but by the second half of the paragraph. If it's before the agenda has been adopted or after the agenda has adopted, Neil has advised that Robert's rules offer these two ways that a motion can be made and by what ratio it must be seconded or approved by the board at that meeting.
That's great. I would just add, that's already your policy. So this is just kind of restating in this policy for clarity what is already the rule for amending the agenda. And so the only thing that's substantively new here is this prior notice requirement. If if an individual member wants to remove a consent agenda item and place it for action or discussion, there has to be prior notice. And the only change we made from the last meeting on that point is instead, the original draft said notice is provided to the board chair based on comments from some of you last meeting. You all wanted to be notified if that was going to happen, so we thought just make the notice go to the full board, then the chair is aware as well as all other members.
And I appreciate this because I think in the original that was looked at in April, the Roberts rules was not spelled out.
Correct.
And so I appreciate that addition, because I was not thrilled with this section, but I'm more comfortable with it, with that being in place, so that board members know how we can still do that if necessary.
Also, just as a point of clarification, the prior notice requirement, that's not a suggestion from staff or attorneys, that's,
Right.
that's,
No, I understand.
but that's a board
Yeah.
issue,
Yeah.
and you all can take, it's up to you.
Yeah.
And if
Mr. Oh, go ahead.
If I may, I said that we were bringing these to you arm in arm, right? So policy 2330 is board meeting agenda. Now, the agenda is spoken to in both policies. And so we have the same language. You can see the original language here. Any board member or superintendent may move items from consent to action. We attempted to get the noon before. We've struck all that and included the exact same language from 2300 that speaks to the noon on Monday, as well as the procedures after agenda adoption or before at the board meeting. That same language is here so that the two policies reflect each other.
Yep. Mr. Hershey?
Are there any guardrails for an individual board member abusing this and putting everything from consent onto action within
Good
Robert's
question.
rules?
Not in Roberts. In Roberts, it's actually, this policy would actually modify Roberts. The Roberts rule is that if you have a single motion that covers multiple unrelated items, any member has a right to pull the items apart and require a separate vote. It's not, and you don't have to make a motion or whatever, it's just say, I divide the question, I'm
Right.
I'm not comfortable with it. So this would impose additional restrictions. You could impose, you're not bound by Roberts. You can, so you could have further restrictions, but this would not. This just says you have to provide prior notice. It wouldn't prevent someone from saying, I'm moving, 2/3 of the consent items to action. As long as the notice is timely, that would be accomplished. So this policy would not address that potential problem.
I would be interested in some kind of guardrails. I don't foresee it happening, but also, if it's, then someone could do it if they just want to make a point and having a 5-hour meeting so everything's on action. Or, beyond a couple of items needs a board approval or something like that. I wouldn't want to just leave it necessarily to one person to decide. Like the board chair, maybe not just him or her being the sole decider, but if it's like beyond 2 or 3 items, it's going to require a motion and a board vote. And I don't need you don't have to come up with it right now, but just as this is coming in August, between now and August, some thoughts on it?
Yeah, we could come, if you want to bring it back to policy committee, we could come up with some options. You don't want,
We're
you
not
don't,
we're not
oh, you don't
having-
have another meeting?
Not in July. I mean, I can work with the board chair to see if we could put it on work session.
Yeah.
And the other option is to put it on action on August 4th.
Right.
Because that would
then
allow.
waive- And we can waive second, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could probably come up with some thoughts, but I'm a little hesitant to sort of, for staff and attorneys to say, here's what you should do. I mean, I understand the potential problem that you might want to address, but there are multiple possible solutions. So it'd probably be helpful to get some direction from you all. Like, would you want to have a cap on the number of items that could be removed and board approval would be required beyond that, or a dispute resolution process, or I don't know, how do
I
you?
don't want to
how do you-
overcomplicate it, but just a cap would be fine with
Cap would be easier to do. A board member may remove up to blank item, I don't know.
Ms. Caulfield and then Dr. Joe.
So it says that this policy was adopted in 2015. Have we ever had an issue with that? Just to address your concern. Has it ever been an issue since 2015?
I don't know, I don't go for most of the meetings, so I wouldn't speak to it.
To my knowledge, I've been in my position since early 2016, and to my knowledge, it has not been an issue. So the policy predates me, but in my 10 years, I don't recall that being.
I assume it's typically 1 or 2 items pulled from consent.
Dr. Joe?
Yeah, and I just want to raise a concern about that. Like, I see where you're coming from, and yeah, I wouldn't want that to happen either. But on the other hand, I think it's important that we don't have a situation, the opposite situation, where like a bunch of, in order to overrule minority voices, we throw a bunch of stuff into consent. And, you know, and then there's a cap that, and so the majority can stop the minority from pulling things out because they've hit that cap. So just to,
That's a very good point, actually. That's the reason for the Roberts rule, is to avoid,
Right.
is to avoid for people being put into the position of, I agree with 90% of these items, but I have to vote for the 10 that I strongly disagree with in order to support the others, and that's not fair.
and I don't want it to be a situation where like to pull out 5 items or whatever, if, you know, if the bad actor, because you're talking about a bad actor who's trying to make things difficult.
Right.
So if the bad actor is part of the majority and, you know, wants to like force stuff through, I'm not a big fan of that either, of having a cap on what you can pull out.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I suppose the other option, we could try this. If problems, you know, if you do have problems, there are other procedural ways that you can address, you know, board issues. You know, you could, you know, potentially look at, you know, taking action against a rogue board member who's really intentionally thwarting your meetings. There's certain things you could do for that, but we can maybe try this and see and consider, you know, further revisions. That's another option.
That's fine.
My input on what you're saying, I don't like going too far away from Robert's rules, because I think that is our baseline, you know, that we generally stick to, and we may make modifications here and there in policy, but I don't want to deter too far off of that. And like any other policy, if we do find that it becomes a problem, we can bring this back and change it.
Okay.
So my understanding is we're going to leave it as is, and if that's the case, then I want to ask, did anybody have anything else about any other part of it? So I'd like to ask that we waive first and second reading for 2300 and put it on consent for August 4th.
So moved.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Dr. Crane, 3330.
2330,
What did I say?
33.
Sorry, 2330.
2330, we've reviewed this change with you.
Yeah.
The language mirrors what's in 2300.
Any questions? All right, so can we get that same motion for 2330? I would have done them together, but I don't have my rhythm down.
So moved.
Okay, is there a second? Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, 8330, assembly and electronic signatures.
This policy is a migration of our current policy 8651, facsimile signatures. Statute requires that the board have a resolution or a policy authorizing the use of facsimile signatures. This policy suffices, our old policy, this policy migrating over meets that requirement when you authorize that in the policy. Staff worked with our attorneys to broaden the scope of this policy to include electronic signatures and electronic records. So what you see in front of you in black is new policy for us. Anything that is in red is School Board Association language regarding facsimile signatures. And anything that we struck out of what the School Board Association's language is in blue. You will see most of what's in this policy is new for us and is not in School Board Association language. It is, however, in policy language as adopted by Rockingham County and Person County Schools in their policy manuals. With that in mind, I'm going to turn things over to our finance officer.
Thank you, Dr. Crane. Good afternoon, board members. So the policy is adopting, so electronic signatures is a practice that we began using because there is law that permits it within federal as well as state. And we did that in consultation with the board attorneys. So DocuSign is a platform that we use, and there are other platforms that are available, as well as in-system platforms that we do for signing and authorizing renewals of employment contracts. So to align with practice, we wanted to update the 1977 adopted policy to current 2026 practices. And so that's what you'll see here in the policy, which aligns with the resources that we initially took from our attorneys. And Mr. Ramey was also involved in adding and creating and finalizing this draft. Anything you'd like to add?
Nope, I think fully supported. It complies with all the applicable laws on electronic signatures, state and federal.
Great. Any questions? Yeah.
I just have a question, and I'm not sure if it really fits into policy or if it needs to come into something else, but when we do this DocuSign, we're going through a third party and private information is being shared. And we saw what happened with Power School, and we're hearing, through Canva and all that other stuff. Like, how do we, does that fit within this policy as far as, is this where we would apply that we expect this party to follow our security measures? Because I see that, there's verbiage in F.
So we do have other policies in place, and Sasha is here that may be able to speak on that. But we have a data security and confidentiality agreement, and all vendors that we do any type of electronic, online platform, sign-on digital, they have to be vetted to not only meet our internal criteria for technology, but there's a software platform that all staff have to go through that technology is vetted, and if it's not an approved software, then we cannot use it. They have to go through the technology team, including Eric Hoth, who deals with our security. But Sasha, is there anything else you'd like to add?
You said it all.
Okay, well,
So
thank you.
every piece of software we bring onto the district has to go through a comprehensive vetting process. We not only review the DCA that the vendor needs to sign off on, but we also look at the integration points. We also look at the security aspects, where how the data is stored. We look at all those things, and then formally we onboard that particular vendor. And we do that at every software vendor we do business with.
As well as a certificate of insurance, including the cyber insurance protections for the district.
And so I think that's the right question to ask. So this is a platform that comes with a high level of security. It's been around for a while because it deals with electronic signatures. It's going to have that added security. But I always like to remind people that any electronic format is subject to somebody trying to hack it. And we just have to remind people of that all the time, that we're going to go through all the protocols. We're going to do the same. But people get smarter every day, and that's just the world that we live in. But that's the right question to ask. I appreciate you asking.
For me, F3 says that. I mean, it's very few words, but it says prevent unauthorized access or use.
That's what I was going to say. The section F requires that you can't just use any electronic signature system. I mean, these are vetted, pre-approved centrally. So, and staff have gotten legal opinions on some of those things, like Adobe is a secure system that is safe and well vetted, and it meets applicable state and federal requirements for e-signature. So I think it's pretty clear in this policy. You can't just use any electronic signature. You can't just type a name in and call it an electronic signature. But if it's an approved system that's run through finance and technology services, then it should be safe.
Yes, and I would highlight that in the legal references, you'll see the U.S. Electronic Signatures and Global and National Commerce
Yeah,
Act,
there's the statutes.
and then the North Carolina Electronic Commerce Act. So a platform like DocuSign has to meet those verification standards for us to even use that system for both of these legislative acts.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, so can we get 8330 put on for first reading on consent on the August 4th agenda? Second. Thank you. That was Ms. Gordon. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. And 9400.
So I am here today in Assistant Superintendent Dave Burnett's stead, in absentia, if you will. And we are migrating existing policy 7250, disposal of real property and granting easements. This is also a North Carolina School Boards Association model policy. The new number is 9400. It'll be moved over to our new manual. What is black in this, what you see on the screen is School Board Association language. What is blue comes from our policy, or you will see our edits. In the beginning, we have a sort of a standard, this is what we consider, and when, always as authorized by law. Section A reflects our policy, disposal of real property, and outlines the procedures prescribed in General Statutes 160A, Article 12. We also added language here at the end of that policy that is from our current policy regarding the relationship and between the Board of Education and the county commissioners there. There's some additional statutory language regarding leases, and all contracts must be consistent with General Statute 147, Article 6E. I believe that's one of the divestment acts. Yep, yes. Finally, Section B is part of our language about granting easements. And you'll see a lot of blue here, and this is our language. It's how we do business now. And our staff have recommended that we retain the same title, disposal of real property and granting easements. Happy to answer any questions.
So board members, Mr. Burnett in our facilities department has given his approval of this as we see it today. Dr. Taylor, I did want to ask you, we have a new facilities director coming in. Do you have any concern that that person needs to review this before we move it forward?
No, I think all of this is standard property disposal, and so I don't think she will have any issues with it, but I'll definitely send it to her so that she can review it and then give me some feedback, but I don't see anything that would not be standard work.
Okay,
The vast majority of it is just statutory requirements and constitutional requirements.
great. All right.
And Ms. Edmonds, I would
Yes.
add that I did have an opportunity, Dr. Crane and I reviewed it, so I do agree that it aligns with our current statutes as well as what we've been doing and sharing with the board and bringing forward. If we're disposing of property, following the county commissioners, which that's outlined in there, giving them opportunity, the fair market value for the property, as well as the use of any disposition property, the funds going back into the capital program, or if there was an agreement when that property was sold to use it to pay down county debt. So those are all statutory requirements.
Thank you. Mr. Hershey?
Does the fair market value clause in this apply to trailers?
Yeah, well, let's see, it would apply to any real property. Trailers can be tricky because they're movable. I think the last I had a case on this in the Court of Appeals in like 2003 or 4. So I'm not sure if the law's changed since then, but at the time there was a debate about some of that, like if the trailers are tied down and anchored on site, they could be considered a building. But if they're still in a movable state, they're personal property. So I think it may depend on that.
Just want to make sure that that language does not prevent us from removing
Oh,
trailers.
Yeah, no, if you can
Or
pick it up,
selling.
yeah, if you can move it,
Yeah.
then it becomes personal. Once you detach it from the land, it becomes personal property, and it's
Thank you.
not subject to that
Okay,
requirement. Yeah,
great.
yeah, I get
And
your
there
question.
is a separate board policy on disposition of property, that is the policy that we follow when disposing mobile units.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. So can we get a motion for 9400 to go first reading on consent for August 4th?
So moved.
Second. Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.
If you would like to hear a funny story, just a quick
Is it
anecdote.
about AI?
It is about this policy 9400, disposal of real property. Emails moving back and forth between staff, and I saw an email about Sunday Drive. Disposal of property in Sunday Drive. We happen to own a piece of property, a parcel of property on Sunday Drive.
Okay.
Before I understood that it was the parcel of property, I thought, oh, we're gonna have a Sunday, Sunday sale, like go on a Sunday drive and go have a big yard sale. The district's gonna sell surplus property, right? We're gonna dispose property. I spoke with my colleague, Dr. Albert Keith, who's not here, and she thought it had to do with perhaps Sunday Drive was a cloud drive storing information. What's on the Sunday Drive and how are we disposing of that? It was later that I understood this was a parcel, a real property parcel, real estate property. Yeah, okay. So it is. They are two very different things, yes, real property is considered very differently than. It's kind of tricky though because it's all real, isn't it? I mean,
No, that was a great question, and I appreciate the clarification.
right? Wait, well, and yeah, I grew up in a time where we went on Sunday drives because there was nothing else to do on Sunday afternoon except for go for a drive.
All right. Well, we are going to move on to the big old item of the day, which is this new AI policy. And board members, I'll tell you, our intent is to get this at least a first reading, but I've spoken with Chair Swanson and Policy Vice Chair Haggerty and Vice Chair Hershey. We all want you to take this to your BACs in the fall. I have not had, my BAC has not seen this. I have not gotten their input. Dr. Jobe, I know, has heard from some students, and in reviewing the May meeting, Mr. Swanson actually spoke about student input as well. So we know that the working group collected a lot of input, Dr. Taylor's leadership team and your principal advisory and student advisory, but that's different than board members taking it out. We did that with the cell phone policy, and I think we should do it with this as well. But I do think that this draft is so much better and has come so far since the last draft that we saw. So I want to thank you, Dr. Crane, and all the folks that you worked with to get it to what is in front of us today. And I hope board members will sort of make a common agreement that getting input from our communities and principals and students. We don't want to necessarily completely overhaul what's before us, but rather, make it better and build on this. And then we know that there's legislation moving quickly through the General Assembly. So it'll give us time if we take this if we can just get it to first reading and then collect some input. That also buys us time to see what product we end up with out of the North Carolina General Assembly, assuming they're going to adopt something soon. So with that, I will turn it over to staff and let me know. I do have Mr. Haggerty's input, but I want you all to get us started first, and then we'll get to that.
I'm going to start with stating my intent for today. It's my desire that you guys know, that everyone know, that the draft that you're going to see today that is provided as backup was put together by a number of folks. That language is grounded in the most accurate, well-sourced, credible language available. We want to be transparent about that and transparent about what our sources were. and the process that went into that. It is not the product of any one person. So if you have questions, please ask away and we will get you answers. If we don't have them, we will go find them and bring them back for you. Attached to the item in assembly are 4 things. This presentation that I'm going to walk through with you, Draft B, which is the draft that we'll review with you today, Draft A, which is the one that you've seen twice, last June and this May, and House Bill 301, version 6, which has been engrossed, which I have learned means it's in its final form. We are 1 vote shy. I understand that the House needs to confirm they agree with any of the Senate's substitutions, and then it will go to the governor's desk. So we are very close on that. And I have that up in the browser here as well. So our purpose today is to review the revisions that were made to the draft artificial intelligence policy. We have revised the name to be broader and address artificial intelligence and not just generative artificial intelligence, and to gather feedback on desired next steps. Definitely want to acknowledge, as we just spoke about, House Bill 301, social media and AI safety. Both the House and the Senate introduced versions of a bill like this last May, June. The House version is the one that has moved forward. It has 5 parts. Part 1 is about social media protections for children. Part 2 is about modifying computer science standards and inserting standards around artificial intelligence in that curriculum. Part 3 is public school unit AI policies, and there are 2 major shifts there. One is that DPI shall develop an model AI policy to specifically address 4 topics. We can take a look at what those topics are here. This is the language in this first part, a definition of AI, generative AI and AI tools, guidance on how to develop the literacy of students and school staff, that it shall include education about non-consensual intimate imagery. Part 3, the third thing, data privacy and security measures. And Part 4, standards of ethical and acceptable use of AI and AI chatbots in an educational setting, including standards of academic integrity. So DPI must develop a model policy, and then here's the new 115C-47, a new Part 73, which will be the board's responsibility to adopt an AI use policy as pursuant to the statute right above these 4 items, et cetera. DPI is going to develop a model policy.
And to be clear, the requirement is just you consider the model DPI policy and then adopt it. And you won't be required. This won't be DPI policy per se. It's just a template.
Right.
So this statute probably, it's a bill likely to be a statute unlikely to tie your hands too much. It is possible that the DPI could develop, or the State Board of Education could develop its own policy that would have substantive requirements. I haven't heard anything about that yet.
And let me just ask, I'm sorry, Dr. Crane, the cell phone bill, if I remember correctly, had a deadline for for school districts. This one, okay, there it
This
is.
does
I was
to
like,
June 30,
I
2027.
was thinking it was going to be up in that first part, and I printed, anyway.
The Department of Public Instruction has to develop, if it passes, the model by December 31, 2026. Boards of Ed will have to adopt one by June 30, 2027.
We're not waiting that long.
And unlike the cell phone, if you recall, the cell phone policy, that statute had specific requirements. So we did have to go, you guys got ahead of it, to your credit. We did have to go back and tweak it a little bit.
Yes.
This, I don't think this will be the situation here unless this radically changes in the final stretches here, because All this statute does is says DPI gives you a model, you consider the model, then adopt your own policy. So I think you're okay to go ahead and adopt your own policy.
I appreciate that, but I do want the board and the public to know that we have every expectation that we may revisit this, even if we adopt it. I expect us to adopt it by, the, let's say, end of first semester, so I don't know a date yet, but in this, current semester of the 26-27 school year. However, I think we all understand with as fast as things are changing, even if the legislation doesn't change, that we may need to bring it back,
Sure.
early in 2027 or next summer. So it's something we expect to revisit. All right, go ahead, Dr. Crane. Thank you.
Part 4 of the legislation speaks to DPI developing a tool evaluation framework and publish that evaluation framework, lists of tools that systems are using that have met the framework requirements, and procurement guidance. I think you heard early in our meeting from both our finance director and our chief technology officer, we have much of this infrastructure already in place. We have internal evaluation frameworks. We have internal approved items, approved digital items for use, and procurement guidance around those things. Should someone want to buy something, it must meet these other criteria first. And finally, part 5, the educator and administrator training on the use of AI. DPI will partner with the Friday Institute at NC State. The statute does address 8 topics specifically, and they are laid out here. I have not specifically spoken with our digital learning and library staff to get a crosswalk of these 8 items and our current training that we do offer, have offered in our AI guidance. I know that that would be possible to do for you. We already have offered some of that. We have guidance. The statute does say that the Friday Institute has to have it made available by June 30, 2027, and that all teachers would have to take that and complete it by June 30, 2028. So those are the 5 parts of the statute. I want to be fully transparent to let you know that I did use Notebook LM, and with the help of my colleague, Charles Patton. I like Notebook LM because you provide the tool with the sources you want it to consider. This is huge for me, in that you can guarantee the credibility of the sources that you put in rather than relying on a large language model or internet search for hits. So Mr. Patton put in both the June 25th, 2025 Policy Committee meeting and the May 26th, 2026 Policy Committee meeting. These are indeed the YouTube videos of our 2 meetings, and I asked it, what did our Policy Committee request that we include, or what is missing? And it gave us a list of 7. I did verify these with my own notes, items that I had captured, other staff had captured, and I will point out at the bottom that this tool does tell you that Notebook LM can be inaccurate and to double check its responses. This is another reason why I like this tool. It is very transparent. So, here are the items verified by staff. You asked for guidance on AI detectors or detection, support for families, addressing ethics and moral responsibility, a separation of policies, one for staff perhaps, one for students, age-appropriate differentiation, bias mitigation and audits, and an oversight committee. Did we miss anything? Let me go ahead and ask you.
Go ahead, Mr. O'Shea.
You mean from, like, our thoughts right now, or just from the previous?
These 7 items, you agree these are accurate? I guess I should rephrase. I believe these are accurate. They reflected in my notes, and they reflected the conversation. I will, just a bit about this tool. If you see these little, they're very hard to see here, but if you see these little circles with a number in them, when you are in Notebook LM, if you tap on that, it will take you in the sources you provided to the specific place where that information came from. In this instance, it's to the transcript of the YouTube videos that were uploaded. Whatever resources you put in, it will take you directly in that source to where it came up with this information. Another reason why I like this tool. What did we do with that information? We've revised the title. It's artificial intelligence instead of generative AI. We've inserted some of those new considerations for governance and oversight. We certainly added the ethical and moral responsibility piece for the Board of Ed. We've inserted 5 new definitions. Some of that was based on the fact that the proposed legislation includes 4 definitions as required for the model policy. So let's make sure that we get those inserted. We've created some new principles of use. So we no longer have board commitments and guidelines. We have principles of use. And those include safety, wellness, human-centeredness, privacy and security, responsible and ethical use as divided by staff and students, transparent communication and community engagement, and training and support for all users. Your feedback told us in these meetings that the initial draft of the policy was way too bandwagon flag waving supportive of AI. So we revised the tone of the policy. It is much more cautious now, that we acknowledge what risk that we're taking, that we are transparent about when we use it and how we reflect that to our families and our community. And we are much more specific with some governance details. So we make sure that, so for example, that tools are developmentally appropriate and pedagogically meaningful, approved tools for student use. We also have a formal stance on AI detection noted in the policy. So here's how we believe that this policy, the version B that's attached, measures up. We have addressed clear language regarding AI detectors for grading. Humans are in the loop. Teachers are the best resource to understand the progress of their students. They know their students and their work. That is also a standard by the National Board for Professional Teaching Standards, that teachers know the content and they know their students. We have addressed ethical and moral responsibility by the board and staff to make sure that we are reinforcing core values of public education. We are providing support for families by giving information and potentially some training and being fully transparent about how we're using AI. Here's where I believe we've got some of the way. Separation of policies. We did not split the policies into 2, one for staff and one for students, but we do address what responsible use looks like for staff and what responsible use looks like for students. We did not give you grade band differentiation, K-5, 6, 8, 9, 12. We did build in that statement about developmentally appropriate and pedagogically meaningful. Here's what we did not get to in this version, and that is bias mitigation and audits, as well as an oversight committee. Beyond our already internal processes of addressing approvals and security reviews, et cetera, we did not get to a place of formally auditing any AI beyond how we look at any tool digitally that we provide for the district. And an oversight committee is most certainly a requirement. And we did not get to that part in this version of the policy, what an oversight committee would do. That may also be something for an RMP. maybe we could insert a statement in the policy that we should have one, and it will maintain this. But again, we already have a security officer. Eric, isn't that your title?
Yes, information security officer.
We have an information security officer for the district. So there are some folks who already work in these roles and within our organization. So if we could turn now to the actual draft. Everything you see in blue was added by our staff. Everything that is underlined is already in existing AI guidance, our policies regarding information security, confidentiality, and privacy, academic integrity, and our honor code. And some of it even references House Bill 53, I'm going to get it wrong, number 301. So I want you to know where it comes from. It did not come from a large language model giving us this information. It came from the credible sourced information that we have available to us and that we're already using, what we're already offering in professional development. We did put a number to the policy. The 3200s address instructional materials. So for example, 3225 is technology responsible use. Seemed to fit here for students. That 3229 would be an appropriate place. 6529, this is in the equipment, materials, and supplies area. And 7329 is under staff responsibilities. So we can keep all three of these numbers, eliminate the middle one, not sure, we can talk about that, but that's the origin or genesis of these numbers. We struck generative to make sure that the policy was broad enough to address artificial intelligence, not just generative AI. In the front of the policy, you'll see that we have some new language about the rapid pace of change and development in AI presents unique challenges to school systems in both operational and instructional contexts and requires new considerations for governance and oversight. Here's some of the acknowledging risk. If used without care or oversight, artificial intelligence poses serious risks, including bias, misinformation, erosion of privacy, loss of human connection, and over-reliance on automated systems. The board acknowledges its ethical and moral responsibility to ensure that such tools are used in ways that reflect and reinforce transparency, accountability, and a steadfast commitment to the benefit of teaching and learning, as well as operational efficiency. Let me stop and also acknowledge that Mr. Hershey did a lot of work on a version of this policy, and he shared that with us. We did include and incorporate some of his language. Thank you, Mr. Hershey. In the definitions section, you will see that we added a definition for artificial intelligence. This comes from AI for Education, and I will acknowledge it is 3 years old. There are some other definitions for AI that are encoded in federal statutory language that we can consider for that. AI tools, we've defined. This comes from existing guidance. They are computer systems designed to automate tasks that normally require human intelligence. We have our definition of generative AI that came from the North Carolina School Boards Association. We have the same definition, slightly expanded, also from the North Carolina School Board Association for AI literacy. We have a new definition for AI fluency. This is language that comes from existing guidelines and professional development within the district. It's the ability to integrate AI tools into learning, problem solving, and professional workflows. This requires a human-centered approach rooted in appropriate task delegation, critical assessment of outputs, and diligence in acknowledging and citing AI when necessary. We also have a new definition for academic misuse. It includes, but is not limited to, the unauthorized or undisclosed use of AI tools to complete assignments, assessments, or other academic work in which the AI tool's output is presented as the student's original thought or effort. Issues of academic misuse will be handled in accordance with our honor code policy and our student behavior code of student conduct policy. One of the ways that we have addressed technology and the misuse of technology, whether cyberbullying or cheating, is that bullying is bullying and cheating and plagiarism are cheating and plagiarism, whether you are doing it online with bullying or whether you are copying out of your World Book Encyclopedia. Pry it from my or copying out of your Cliff Notes or your whatever, that's cheating and plagiarism. So whether you are copying from a large language model or from your World Book Encyclopedia, that is presenting something else as my original thought and effort. So we don't need to kind of codify different tools might do different things. Cheating is cheating, plagiarism is plagiarism, just like bullying is bullying. AI detectors, this is also new, are tools designed to identify content generated using AI. They usually give you like a prediction that something is X% probable to be an AI generated. We state clearly, as is already in our guidance, the district does not support the use of AI detection programs due to their technical unreliability, inaccuracy, and potential for bias against specific student populations, including those for whom English is a second language. This is consistent with prioritizing a human-centered approach. Yes, sir.
When we do, just as a process for developing policy, when we're doing definitions, do we generally state the rest of it that WCPS does not support and everything else, or do we just stick to definitions? And I'm just thinking about how we normally do it and where we state those things clearly.
That's a great point and a good question. Mr. Patton and I had a couple of these conversations as we went through the definitions, that we perhaps had included too much language and went to qualification rather than just stating the definition. But we wanted to be clear that we stated up front and in the
I mean, I don't disagree with that, with stating it. I'm just asking if that's where it belongs when we put together a policy. That's all. For thought.
Sure, thank you. We also have a new definition about bias. Refers to the fact that AI tools trained on human data inherently reflect societal biases in that data. Those can be reflected in outputs that reinforce stereotypes, recommend inappropriate educational interventions, or make discriminatory evaluations. Hallucinations, we've added that one as well. This one does come from House Bill 301, or when AI tools reference or provide information that is inaccurate or non-existent. And I will say, just last week, there were some lawyers in, I believe it was either Mississippi or Louisiana, who were fined by the judge in the case because they had submitted documents that had hallucinated case law. They were fined by the judge.
Don't use AI for legal research. Not a good idea.
It had hallucinated those things.
Okay, I'm going to stop here.
Yep.
And just see what questions or comments we have up through the board members. The intro, and then any questions or comments in the definitions section. I have one that I'm pretty firm on, and that's in definitions number 4, in adding the word "and biases" after the word "limits." when AI is employed and being aware of its limits and biases. But that's all that I had. And then let me go ahead and say, not to trip everybody up, but board members, you would have gotten last night from Mr. Haggerty his version or draft of an AI policy. This is the printed copy. You can, you know.
This is not. This is not what you forwarded to me. This is what he put to his, because I was just looking.
All right, hang on.
Hang on.
So Dr. Robinson, where did this?
That was a copy that the chair and the superintendent asked to be printed, shared with you guys.
Okay.
To be shared.
This is what you shared. This is
Right.
from his BAC, what he shared with his BAC. This is not this, because I was like,
Okay.
there's a whole bunch of definitions and there's only
Yeah,
two. of
yeah,
these.
yeah. Okay.
Is there an additional one that you may need? That I
So
can
the
run
one that he
upstairs?
sent in an email
That's what you
to,
said, he asked to be printed.
yeah.
That's what the North Carolina School Board Association is the one that you have, correct? The language from the 3220 Technology in the
Yep.
Educational Program
Yep.
as of March 2024.
Okay,
Yes.
my apologies. So I'm crediting Mr. Haggerty with this, and that's not what this is.
No, this is
Okay.
what was shared with me to be printed, to be shared with you guys that was
Okay.
sent
This is
in.
that, has comments from his BAC.
Gotcha. Okay, all right.
But I can raise that point.
Well,
Here we go.
he created a draft, and I'll forward it to everybody, that is a little bit different from this, based on the feedback he got in his BAC. But as I said, to my knowledge, I mean, I haven't had it at my BAC. I don't know that any of you have done it. So I think he's the only one, but he just wanted, you did? Okay. I mean, we discussed AI at my BAC, but it was way before last summer. You know, when we had that first draft. Yeah, Mr. Hershey.
So on behalf of what I think Mr. Haggerty would ask about the definitions is, are we going to, once the bill is passed, would we more closely mirror anything in the bill? I mean, you got what he sent, and I was looking at that, so I think that's what he would probably bring up now. That's however you want to answer it. I don't have a
Could
particular.
you state that again?
So he sent he said basically that he was working on it and putting some things to mirror or align more closely what would be in the potential new state statute. And there are different definitions that are, more, as he says, consistent with state statutory requirements. I'm fine with what we have, but I'm just thinking that he would probably ask that if he was here. I'm gonna send this to you guys.
Yeah.
I assume that what Mr. Haggerty might have, since in this bill, you know, it doesn't really have substantive requirements. It just says that DPI will adopt a model policy that will address 4 separate topics. So I assume Mr. Haggerty mean, you know, we want to make sure that we address all 4 of the topics that we know will be in the model policy. But again, the bill, if this were adopted and enacted into law today, all it would say is DPI is going to adopt a model policy. You guys have to consider it before you adopt your own, but you could reject it entirely and go a different route, I would assume.
Right.
So I don't think there's too many restrictions from the bill, but you know, we'll have to see what DPI does with it, I suppose.
So I apologize for the confusion, but the draft that I have from Mr. Haggerty was in an email format, and it, to your point, it had very specific bolded definitions that followed very closely what was in the legislation, and I compared the two to draft B, and I prefer draft B.
Yeah, I just
And
sent
so
it to the
that's, anyway, yes, Dr. Robinson.
Yes, ma'am. If you would like, I can still run upstairs and I can have that printed as well.
board.
If you
Emailed it to the board.
No,
Okay.
I don't want to confuse things. I want us to get back to, and I appreciate that.
No
Thank
worries.
you
Yes, ma'am.
for the offer. But again, do board members, do you have anything for the opening paragraph or the definitions, knowing that we're going to see this again? But I would like to open the floor if anybody has anything right now before we move on to the next section. Okay, I'm good. All right, so Dr. Crane, let's go over principles of use.
So before in the old draft, we had commitments of the district and then had some guidelines for use. Now we have a section called principles of use. You'll see the underlined language there that exists already. Principles apply across all AI implementations, encompassing both instructional and non-instructional contexts. Those 4 principles are safety, wellness, and human-centeredness is the first one. Privacy and security is the second. The third is responsible and ethical use, which is one that we had before. And 2 additional ones, transparent communication and community engagement, and training and support for all users. The first principle of use, safety, wellness, and human-centeredness, includes much of the language that we did have in the last draft. You'll see that in black, as well as some additional language from other sources, other drafts, including Mr. Hershey's draft, and existing language in our guidance that the use of AI not replace human connection or the cognitive agency of either students or staff. So when we integrate tools, we prioritize behavioral health, academic growth, and overall well-being. AI use should support safe, inclusive, and supportive learning environments. In partnership with educators, the responsible integration of AI should empower students to learn, explore, and create with confidence. The second paragraph, the use of AI should amplify human capability and capacity. Its use should not replace human connection or the cognitive agency of either students or staff. In particular, it should not replace the role of educators who instruct, nurture, and assess students, nor diminish the importance of critical thinking, creativity, effort, and human agency. In all uses, human oversight is critical in evaluating and reflecting on AI use for learning and performance. Questions about this principle of use?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. I appreciate that we're like defining all this and putting all this into like very specific language for everybody to understand how we're going to approach it. You did mention that so far we have not split it into staff and student or age appropriateness.
Correct.
So when we talk about these areas of human-centeredness and cognitive, and then hallucinations and and algorithms, my question is, how do we break that down where the age-appropriate child is not being exposed to that if we're not separating it? Who's responsible for it and how does it get done?
Currently, as tools are reviewed by both our security and our academic teams, they are approved for use for students of various ages. Currently, the AI tools that students in K-5 have access to are Canva and Adobe. They are creative tools, tools to create products. They are not large language models. It's not Gemini. It's not, unless it's an academic software piece, sort of their access to an AI tool is limited only to those things.
So will they be going into Google?
I can't answer that question.
So before because I'm with you on where you're going with this, and I had asked a similar question because last meeting we had the, what we talked about, the toolkit. It was linked in the last presentation, last meeting, and we could go to it, Wake Connect. And I even sent an email saying it seems like what's missing from here are specific guidelines that Ms. Caulfield is talking about. But I would suggest let's finish going through because we're on the same wavelength and then get into what is missing
Okay,
if that makes sense.
that's fine.
Yeah. Lynn in the back.
Dr. Jeff?
Could Part A, or any part of this, but I'm looking at Part A, like I was just thinking about what you're saying about Canva and stuff. A teacher could say like, or a principal even could say, you know what, we're not using Canva at this school anymore. Like, is there anything that prevents a school from saying, we're just not using AI tools in this school?
I don't know the answer to that question.
So, is there anything that would, where a school would say, we're not gonna use AI tools? And I know the answer to that is yes. And that means that it's a site-based decision that we make tools available, because we vetted those. But we want to be very clear that if it's something that we provided as a district, there is some expectation that they use that. But a site-based decision can give a teacher or principal some level of authority to say that we're going to shy away from this. Now, what we do want to be careful of is that they don't make a unilateral decision to do something that we expect. In other words, if we say we expect kids to learn the digital teaching and learning standards, and they say we're just not going to do that. There's just some things they can't absolve themselves of. But we'd have to have some understanding of what they mean when they say, no, we will absolutely not do it. That's not something that I would expect, but there will be some leeway that they would have there.
Okay, because that was a concern that some of the students I spoke to had, was that they'd be, they want to be prepared for, it was high school students, they want to be prepared for college, they want to be prepared just as everybody else, and they were worried that, especially with all the pushback some of the parents are doing, that they might end up in a school where that says, we're not doing this at all. And they wanted some protections of their right to learn this stuff.
And those would be the expectations that we would have, that when it comes to standards that all students are expected to know, then we expect them to do that. And so there may be a digital teaching and learning standard, and they want to use a different tool or a different way to teach that than what we may provide, but they can't just choose not to teach a standard that's been identified.
Ms. Gordon?
To Dr. Job's point, how is it a site-based decision if we have this policy in place? Like, if it's policy, how can it be a site-based decision?
And that's what I mean, that if we've got things that are policy or expectations, they can't absolve themselves of that. But there can be some situations in a school where there's a site-based decision that they may or may not use a tool or engage in a tool. But if we've clearly said this is an expectation, then they have to do that. So that's, we all know as teachers that there's going to be some flexibility that we have within our classroom. But when we clearly identified a standard or something that is expected to be taught, they just can't choose to not do that, cannot do that.
Okay, so point of clarity. So the site-based decision really comes within the tool, not whether or not we are using AI.
I think the answer to that is yes. Yeah.
Just from skimming this, I'm not seeing anything in this policy that would prohibit or require the use of AI at any school. In fact, it would seem like a individual teacher could say, no AI can be used on this assignment. That would be considered cheating on this particular assignment.
Okay.
Another assignment could say, you may use AI, but then they would be limited to the district-approved AI tools. You couldn't use just anything you want. Is that your understanding? Yeah.
Thank you.
Ms. Caulfield?
I just have a question in regards to the bill that is being proposed that's kind of, making all of this happen. If I'm understanding this correctly, it's really just more that we have a policy about AI, not that we are required to actually utilize it, but teach about it. Correct? So if we're using AI, it becomes a decision that we're making case by case, project, teacher, classroom, for the purpose that it needs to be used for. Is that right?
I believe that in the parts that we have talked specifically about applying to our policy has to do with the district adopting a policy on use of AI. The bill does also include modifying computer science standards to instruct on AI. And so it does say the state board shall adopt age-appropriate standards for instruction on AI literacy for grades K through 12. So should it pass, the State Board of Ed will need to adopt standards for instruction that incorporate AI literacy for K-12.
And that's what may impact the policy more than, I think, than the model policy, right? That's, so to be determined what the state board comes up with. What's the deadline for this, Dr. King?
December 30th.
Effective date of that. If you keep scrolling down, it should have an effect.
29?
Yeah, there it is.
What section are we
So it's for the 20, so the state board will have additional restrictions for the 28-29 school year.
Adopt revised standards for implementation, computer science for grades K through 12
Yep.
to include artificial intelligence literacy. It does say that what at least they have to include, the State Board of Ed, responsible and ethical use, limitations of the tools, evaluation and verification of outputs, data and privacy concerns, and best practices in safety when interacting with. And I know that in our district's professional development, there is already included in one of the AI literacy days, I believe, the one from this year, language on what appropriate AI literacy looks like in K,
Yeah, we got
1,
that.
2, 3. Those are already spelled out.
But so to clarify, I think my question was, like, I understand that it says computer science, that's specific to, using that, having that tool makes sense. But it's not requiring us to use it, it's more requiring us to have a policy about it and to incorporate it where that applies.
To instruct about it and to have a policy about using it. It does not require us to use it.
Okay, I just wanted to
Yeah,
get that.
you're correct.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It does not require us to use it. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I mean, to learn about it, but it doesn't require us to use it. So to
Correct.
Ms. Gordon's point, if a teacher is not using it in a lesson plan,
Correct.
that's not something that has to be approved by us. But if they are using it, they have to use the tools that we said are acceptable to use. And that's what this is about.
And so, when we look at what this bill purports to do, and it is about the standards of understanding AI. When you see that modify the computer science standard, so that is a standard that we have to teach. And so it recognizes that this is something that's here, and they want students to be able to learn about it. And then the other portion is about being able to properly vet any tool that you do decide to use to protect students in the process. So again, no requirement that we use AI, but I think this bill recognizes that it's something that's going to be a part of the landscape, and now they want to put up the guardrails to where we do it appropriately and protect students and not have anything at all. So it is about a governance piece.
Okay, thank you.
Did anybody have any questions or comments about the privacy and security section?
Okay. Privacy and security section.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Great, we'll move on to the next section,
Go ahead.
privacy and security. We called this out explicitly in a new principle of use that we prioritize safeguarding of student and staff data in all uses of AI. All users are expected to adhere to district policies and to follow best practices to protect privacy, prevent unauthorized data sharing, and maintain the confidentiality of sensitive information. We have specific policies regarding those things. They are listed there and linked. Approved AI systems and platforms will comply with applicable laws and district policies regarding data privacy and security. You've heard about that review process here today. And again, already our guidance and language, while we implement reasonable measures to secure AI technologies against unauthorized access and misuse, it's the responsibility of all users to protect their information and the information of others. Finally, the last paragraph there says that the district does provide approved tools for student and staff use, and that when logged in with our district accounts in the district provided tool, these tools through agreements and contract specifications keep the data private. They're not used to train models, and they have service agreements and contract specifications regarding the use of those tools and the data it collects.
Mr. Hershey?
Would this be a place to link for families and students what AI tools are approved to use? Because I think that's one thing that's very much missing. And I don't know if it's an RMP or if it's to the guidelines that could change a lot rapidly over a course of time, so we don't have to continuously approve it as a board while staff has the authority to make changes. But we've got to have it somewhere.
Yes, Ms. Goffel, just to add to that, I think it actually would be appropriate to put it in here, because if somebody's looking up the policy, this would link them directly to it, because that information is exactly what you would want them to relate to. They may not know to go and look for an RMP to find that information.
Yeah.
Ms. Gordon?
Yes, to Mr. Hershey's point, while I agree, it is important information for families to be able to reference, we also need to keep in mind that it will be forever changing.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
All right. Section C, responsible and ethical use. Principle that we had before, that we emphasize the appropriate, responsible, ethical, and safe use of all tech resources, including AI, as described in our existing policy 3225, technology responsible use. The use of AI tools by students and employees must align with existing district policies, including our code of conduct and standards for academic integrity and professional behavior, because we are talking about students and staff there. Ethical use includes transparency when AI has contributed to work, avoiding harmful or biased outputs, and using AI in ways that reflect the district's values and commitment to student learning and well-being. Any use of AI for official purposes by staff or students must be disclosed and explained as appropriate. I did an example of that earlier today. I telling you, yes, I used it, and yes, I've confirmed it, and how I used it. Now, I did a lot of explanation there with some stuff, but that's not how that has to be done every time. Someone can say, and we actually have guidelines in digital learning libraries on when to cite, how to cite, etc. So we do have, again, guidelines on how to do that.
Chair Swanson?
Thank you. I know that you referenced the code of student conduct. Will the student code of conduct be updated to reflect the AI guidance, or is that still due to be determined, or?
What we spoke about earlier is that we believe we should treat technology, including AI, in that it is a way of cheating, bullying, discriminating, instead of, it's a way we cheat and plagiarize, whether I'm using AI output or my World Book Encyclopedias from when I was a kid, right? That's cheating or plagiarism. It's cyberbullying, whether it's bullying, whether I use a computer and a social media page to do that, or whether I do it in person, right? So as much as we can, we are sort of sticking to those base definitions. At the moment, we don't see any need to revise the Code of Student Conduct or the Honor Code to reflect AI. Cheating is cheating, plagiarism is plagiarism, and we will, whether it's the use of AI or not. That is.
Yes, and I think since things are evolving and policy is supposed to be black and white, there could be room for some gray area there. So if there is a way to, include or whatever needs to be updated in the code of conduct to spell it out so it's very clear, that's just something I think that could be a little helpful, but I'll defer to my colleagues. That's just my thoughts on it.
Dr. Joe?
I actually had a point that was important to me from the staff side of things. I think we should be more explicit about the fact that AI cannot be the final arbiter of a student's grade on an assignment. I've already gotten reports back of teachers who have built excellent models and excellent prompts for grading certain things. But I don't think that it should ever be, like, it's one thing if it does the first run through or something like that, but I don't think there should ever be an assignment that gets handed back with a grade that the teacher didn't confirm that grade and confirm that assignment. And I think that should be explicit.
Thank you. We move on to say that the use of generative AI, or should say AI there instead of generative AI, does not exempt individuals from accountability, misuse, plagiarism, inappropriate reliance, will be treated as violations of district policy. Then we break down into staff users and student users. Staff use of AI will vary depending on the context. Staff use should align with and adhere to existing policies, outlining responsibilities, preserve safety, wellness, and human-centeredness for self and others, and promote engagement and authentic learning. And then for student users, enhance rather than replace critical thinking and problem solving. And then 2 items that are the same: preserve safety, wellness, and human-centeredness, and promote engagement and authentic learning. And 3 unique ones: maintain unique voice and perspective, avoid over-reliance and dependence, and adhere to the teacher's expectation for its use. And then underneath that, we include a statement that student use of AI falls within the expectations defined in the Honor Code and the Code of Student Conduct. When it's authorized, students will acknowledge its use for the teacher's instruction and avoid copying and pasting AI-generated material, which may put them at risk of plagiarism. Ms. Gordon?
Under staff use, I don't know if this would fit here, but could we possibly add something about staff will be engaged in continuous professional learning opportunities around, the use of AI and, equitable practices as it refers to responsible and ethical use.
So, Ms. Gordon, I think you could certainly put that into policy, but I don't necessarily think it would be required from a PD standpoint, because 1, I think that's going to be reflected in the bill, and 2, that would be a part of the professional development that we know we want teachers to be a part of as it relates to AI. And so, again, I don't think it hurts to put it in there. But the expectation that it's going to be there is not going to go away. So I kind of liken that to, I'm about to date myself now, all of the professional development that we did with computers in the 1990s. So that was, you think about the use of computer technology by teachers. Most teachers did not do that. And so there was an extensive amount of professional development. We talked about the CPU, the hard drive, the floppy disk, blah, 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 all of that. And it was just a part of PD that was needed. You won't see that anywhere now. But in the 90s, it was a big part of it. And so again, I know that's something that by default we know we're going to have to do, and do that professional development. And so to put it there, I mean, it doesn't hurt it anything, but if it's not in there, it doesn't mean it's not going to happen.
Do you have a follow-up?
I'm not sure. Let me think about it.
Okay. Mr. Ritchie?
The last line of it, this whole policy, which is training and support users, says, as such, the district shall provide a comprehensive AI literacy and training strategy that involves training all employees and students in the effective, ethical, and safe use of AI tools.
At the very,
So that's
Okay.
already in there.
Okay, okay, and that would have been my follow-up. Can we at least say the district is responsible for, if not staff?
It says shall provide.
Okay,
So, okay,
thank you.
yeah. Thank you. Yes, Dr. Job?
Now that I'm thinking about it more, I had this as a note for this section, but now I'm thinking about it more, it might have gone back up on A, but I know how you were talking about like bullying is inherently understood, but I wonder if we do need to be more explicit, especially when it comes to NCII with the images, that this will be addressed under the district's bullying policy. That when you make fake images of a student, you know, when fake images are generated of a student, you know, I think that needs to be taken very seriously, and I think it should be addressed specifically.
Yes, I will agree and state, I believe the inclusion in addressing NCII as stated in the House bill is not in this policy at all. There are some very significantly impactful charges that can be brought against someone who engages in that conduct, NCII, as laid out in existing statute. It's real and it's big, and it does need to be in here so that we educate students about that and we're clear about that.
I think we need that as one of the definitions, but then address it. Were you suggesting to address it under the safety, wellness, and human-centeredness? Okay. But I think the NCII should be defined, because not every parent or guardian is going to know what that is. Chair Swanson?
And that leads me back to the student code of conduct. Is that also going to be reflected in that? I just want to make sure, because that's something we take very seriously. And so if the student has to sign off on that, the parents have to sign off on that. If this policy is addressing that, the two should just mirror each other as relates to the severity of you know, consequences of different things. And I'm trying to make sure, look through here and see if that.
Your point's well taken. That if we include that in here, we should review and make sure that is included in our.
Yeah, there is a statement in the definition section, in the definition of academic misuse, that says issues of academic misuse will be handled in accordance with the honor code policy and the student code of conduct. But I think your point is broader than that.
It is.
Anything, use of AI to threaten could be a violation of the threat policy. Use of AI to bully is a violation of the bullying policy. And perhaps we could make some general statement to that effect somewhere in the policy that I don't know that you need to rewrite the code of conduct because it's already flexible enough to cover that, but probably good to make that point here.
Any other comments, questions? Okay, Dr. Crane, let's keep going.
Section D, a new principle, transparent communication and community engagement, states the district's commitment to clear, accessible communication with families, staff, and the broader community about how the district uses AI tools, and includes information about approved tools, opportunities to learn about AI, and updates to policies or practices as the technology evolves.
So this is where I think the oversight committee would fall under. While I know we have, please, tell me.
Mr. Hove.
Mr.
Yes,
Hove,
Eric
yes.
Hove, yeah.
Well, I know your job is to oversee, like, digital technology. Tell me exactly what your role is.
Yeah, it's information security, so it's the security, privacy. To have privacy, you have to have things that are secure. We investigate, and to your point, you know, we give principals evidence when things go wrong, or the lawyers, you know, evidence if they need something in the case.
So when I think about an oversight committee, I'm thinking about not just like monitoring the AI use, but addressing like interest holder concerns, recommending improvements, maybe like an annual evaluation of tools and practices where like educators, students, and families are engaged in the continuous improvement of AI use and tools. So I think our last meeting, I brought up the oversight committee with those things in mind.
And I will acknowledge the Charlotte-Mecklenburg policy on AI has about 2 pages of content on the roles and duties of the oversight committee. Again, I didn't touch that. I didn't look at how to incorporate that for this policy, but it's definitely something that we want to do.
Okay.
And that's what I heard you say as well. That's what I was thinking, not the security piece. Mr. Hershey?
Does D read that when there's a change in an AI tool, the staff or however the approval process is approves a new one, there's a change in what grade can use it, does how it reads guarantee an email to families to let them know, given we're talking about the rapid change of AI and tools could be changing very rapidly? I don't know how it reads, and if it's clear to everyone else but me.
I don't think it states that.
It doesn't state that explicitly. It does say how tools are used, including information about approved tools, opportunities to learn about it, and updates to policies or practices. So it doesn't say, we changed the list of approved tools, we're going to email every parent.
From my own, as one board member and as a dad, given where AI is now especially, I would want us to, if we have changes, we have to send out a communication. This is a pretty standard, like, we're making some changes, and this gets deeper into like where we list all the tools and the guidelines and stuff, but that would be my personal preference as one of 9.
Okay, thank you. The last section of the policy is training and support for all users. The district supports AI literacy and equitable access. Developing AI literacy for students and staff is critical to ensure appropriate, responsible, ethical, and safe use. As part of AI literacy, students and employees should be encouraged to examine the origin behind AI tools, so who develops, funds, and governs the systems they use, including the values, goals, and potential biases embedded. I think that's part of some of the AI literacy standards that already exist and are already incorporated in the North Carolina DPI AI guidance, as shared, the AI guidelines, the state's AI guidelines. Understanding the motivations behind tools, whether commercial or ideological or civic, is critical to making informed and ethical decisions in their use. And finally, and this is red, so this is North Carolina School Board Association language. As such, the district shall provide a comprehensive AI literacy training strategy that involves training all employees and students in the effective, ethical, and safe use of AI tools. Your thoughts about this section? Again, I believe the second paragraph is already included in some of those AI literacy standards in the DPI AI guidance for the state.
Ms. Gordon? Thank you. You saw my finger. I actually want to take it all the way back to the very beginning. And I just had a thought. Is it appropriate to say that the district is fully committed to making sure that students are AI literate? Students and staff are AI literate. And I guess that's going back to the whole like site-based decision conversation. Well, I like the language as it's laid out, as it's presented to us, that fully, I guess, embodies some of the concerns that we were talking about, like, you know, understanding the dangers of it, but also understanding that we have a duty to make sure that we are making sure that our students and our staff are AI literate.
I've taken that down, thank you.
Ms. Caulfield?
This isn't pertaining to the last section at all, but I know that Dr. Job had brought up the bullying, which is really very important, especially the things that we have seen in the news and everything. Can we be pretty strict, specific, and serious about that language? You know, one of the feedback that I got in my board advisory committee is that when we or actually even started with the legislation, I can't spit it out, when they made a law that we had to take the cell phones away for instruction, and then we created a policy, it alleviated the pressure from the specific teachers and also the principals. And they said that their feedback was that more conversation, more relationships, but less bullying was happening in the schools. So giving them the access, we know that they all get smart and they find their ways around it. We know that even with Canva, they were able to find ways around that. And when they had access to YouTube, they were able to get around that. But I don't think that we address the bullying part of it specifically. And I would like us to give certain details, like photos, images, altered images, videos, so that it just cannot be, that it's not vague language, that is very specific and intended to be extremely strict about it. If that makes sense.
Thank you.
Mr. Hershey?
I have some language for Ms. Dory, to her point, to consider on the last one, on NE, where it says the district supports AI literacy. What about the district supports and seeks to ensure AI literacy? And then that kind of leads to the last paragraph. As such, the district shall provide. Would that, you think that would cover it?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Or just reiterate for all users, even though it's in the title, that's what E is titled,
Mhm.
but reiterate it in that
Yeah.
first sentence,
Yeah.
AI literacy for all users, staff and students.
What was the word that you used, Mr. Hershey?
And seek to ensure.
Seek to ensure, yeah.
So the district supports and seeks to ensure AI literacy.
So, yes, Chair Swanson.
Just thinking out loud, I'm hoping that it's not going to be punitive if a teacher chooses not to participate in those AI literacies or opportunities. So, or if a student chooses not to. So, wondering what would is there some gray area around that? I know policy is policy, but I don't want someone who's uncomfortable with it being violating policy. So, just trying to throw that out there for us to kind of wrestle with a little bit.
I think, Mr. Ramey, if we were to use seeks to ensure, that would not limit a teacher or student from opting out, would it?
I don't read that as a specific requirement that every teacher integrate AI. I mean, you all made this, it may be that, for example, for pedagogical reasons, you're not going to use AI at all with a first grader, for example.
Right.
And I don't think this policy would say you're in violation of policy because you're not teaching your first graders literacy. It's not that specific or prescriptive. But we can certainly give further thought to that suggestion, you know, whether additional language would help clarify something along those lines. I mean, in general, I think I take this policy to be pretty broad strokes, and I agree with some of the comments made that there will be additional guidance will be needed, whether it's R&P or administrative guidelines up there, at least be a list of approved AI tools, for example. That could be a regulation, or it could be a list on a website. But that may be, to Mr. Hershey's point, that's something that you're going to need to update frequently. And it might be better to have that not in policy, but in RMP or guidelines that can be updated more readily.
Chair Swanson, we did discuss when we started this conversation that the expectation is that everybody takes it to their BACs in the fall. And I feel like this should probably come back to a work session for discussion, but we don't have to decide that today, that it be on what date. I would advocate for August 4th, but if it doesn't work with the work session agenda, I don't think we have to decide that today, if that's
Yeah, the
okay
two
with you.
August work sessions are already pre-planned.
Okay. So where I'd like to leave it is just that Chair Swanson and I will get together to find a work session for this to land as soon as we can. And again, taking it to your BACs in the fall. Dr. Crane, I'd like to ask that when it comes back to work session, that it's a little more, I really appreciated your slides at the intro where you talked about what didn't land, what wasn't included, so please keep that. But in the draft, the next draft that we see, could you make either highlights or something to show us what language most tightly hugs language in the legislation?
Yes.
That would help me. And I'd rather see it color-coded or something rather than just the parentheses of HB.
Yes.
That's just the format that would work better. And I think that might be helpful for the public if they review the materials, to see that. Just to be reminded that there's legislation and it's not just Wake County Public Schools.
Yes.
Drafting policy.
Okay.
Chair Swanson, are you still okay if we go a little longer? Okay, because I would like to go to the last policy, and thank you, everybody, and thank you, staff that joined us. I'm sorry I didn't welcome you at the beginning, but I appreciate you being here and all the time involved. But I would like for us to at least start the discussion for 3615 and 7215, the memorials and grief support.
So we have with us at the table today Dr. Corliss Thompson-Drew, who is Director of School Psychology. Yes. Got that one. Yeah, it's important. And to let you know, this is a new policy. It is a Wake-only policy. It is not built on a School Board Association model policy base or foundation. We've given it the number 3615, 7215. 3610 is our counseling program policy. This policy would follow that one in our policy manual in the instructional program as it seeks to really meet students where they are and address their needs within the instructional environment of school, as well as policies. The series 7200s addresses the work environment for our employees. And the policy does address the death or loss of a student or a staff member, and the loss of either and or both do impact both our students and our staff. Dr. Thompson.
All right. Well, thank you so much for having me. I will give you a brief overview of our rationale for having a memorial policy. Part of the work that I do for the district is to coordinate our school safety and crisis response, and that has to do with responding to suicide, behavioral threat, deaths, and other crises in schools. And as we have continued to work towards that, there's been an increasing need for us to look at a policy. We do have guidelines for memorials, and what we want to do is to make sure that we are striking a balance between a very human need to grieve a loss, because all life is important, and at the same time to preserve the educational environment. In my work, what we have done is looked at the current training that we have, and there's increasingly a need and a recommendation that schools and school districts adopt a memorial policy. Adopting a policy does a couple things. One, it ensures consistency across all deaths, right? We don't want to give the impression that one death is more important than the other. It ensures that we have what we call contagion prevention, and this is particularly the case when there's been a suicide. We don't want to glamorize any kind of death, particularly suicide. Our kids are very vulnerable. We want to make sure we can contain it. It also addresses family sensitivity, right? Making sure that we're working with families so that they, in their grief and their process, can have their needs met as well. And so this proposed policy is one that would help us do that. They're the guiding principles around just being respectful and sensitive in times of loss and dealing with families. The issue around equity. Again, making sure that we treat all death with the same, we afford it the same standard, and that we're not holding one person's situation more prominent to another. School is a learning environment. We want to make sure that we're not creating undue re-traumatization for other folks by being exposed to other death that they may not have had any notion of. So making sure we hold the learning environment is very important. And then we really work around the emotional safety of students. I mean, that is our goal in school safety and crisis response. We want to make sure people are emotionally safe, psychologically safe, and then they can go about their business of being students and staff. Some of the things in here, we're very much wanting to make sure that whatever we do, again, that we're working with families, that we have the consent of a family. Number one, to share information, to create any activities, we have to respect the family's wishes. When we do our work around crisis response, we don't share any information unless we've had the family's okay to do that. And we also seek to make sure that the information we're sharing has been verified and is in accordance with their wishes. We want to make sure that any kind of communication is also done appropriately. So there are things here about signage in terms of posting messages, making sure we don't have personal information that's being shared inappropriately. We have come across situations where families in their loss have asked questions about, well, can we have memorials on our campus, right? Is it appropriate to do those kinds of things? So we want to speak to that again, school is school, and this is not a place we would want to have memorials or funerals, partially because, again, we don't want to have ongoing situations that people now become to associate with a space, right? So if it's school, that's what we do, we learn. It's not a space where we hold funerals and memorials. We do recognize that sometimes there are spontaneous memorials. So we might have a student or a staff death, and people want to bring cards and flowers and those kinds of things, and that's okay. But we have to know that we need to have a time limit on that, right? So we call those spontaneous memorials. We can set guidance around how long those things will be there, and then we can turn those things over to the family. We already have a policy in place about naming facilities, in terms of permanent memorials. Typically, guidance and best practices that we don't have permanent memorials because it changes the landscape of the school and those kinds of things. But again, we here have a naming policy around naming, so we can use that. We have also looked at graduation ceremonies because that often becomes a pretty sensitive issue. What can families do, what they cannot do. The best practice guidance is that we don't do things such as empty chairs or a shout out or having the parents participate in graduation ceremonies by walking across the stage. Right now what we do, they can have a vase with a flower, they can be acknowledged in the program, those kinds of things. But again, what we really want to make sure is that graduation is a time of celebration, it's a time of recognition of our students moving forward, and it's not an appropriate space for a memorial service. One very particular thing that we're very concerned about is when there's a death because of suicide. And I'll say right now, suicide prevention is my passion. It's something that I will die on. And we've had them in this district. And the issue around how do we respond to a child or even student, a staff member that have died by suicide and supporting their family and doing it in a way that does not glamorize it, right? Again, because our students are very vulnerable and we don't want to send a message that this is a way for you to get recognition. But we also want to recognize and honor that student's death. And so it's very important in those situations that schools take their leads from my team in terms of what is appropriate and how do we respond to that. And in some cases, families don't want to share that as the reason for the death, and that's their right to do so, so being sensitive around that. And so very specific guidance about what we need to do if there has been a death due to suicide, and how do we respond, and how do we advise families in terms of honoring the life of their loved ones, but at the same time preserving the educational environment and making sure that we're not unduly introducing any trauma or psychological harm to others. So I think in a nutshell, what I would say is that this policy will do, again, a couple things. It will give us clear, consistent guidance about what will be permitted, how to do that in a sensitive way so that we're honoring that person's whose life has been lost and their family's wishes. We maintain the order in our educational environment, and we're doing something that's equitable for everyone. What questions do you have?
Board members, questions? We've got a couple. Yep, Ms. Caulfield.
This is clearly a heavy policy. I understand what you're stating and what you're putting out. This is a completely new policy?
Yes, ma'am.
So I understand what you're putting out, and I understand that the school is not a place for memorial, but these children are going through some really serious times, and not acknowledging that, I feel could be way more detrimental to our students. They see the loss. They know that child or that teacher or that principal is no longer there. And nobody addressing it, I find that might be more confusing. I think there's a difference in mourning them or a memorial versus celebrating that person and bringing some positive light to that. And I could think of a few examples of all of the three things that I just said, student, teacher, and principal, even in my own district, where I feel that if it would have gone completely ignored, it would have added a lot of confusion and anxiety to the students around them. And I appreciate the family being involved in that because it could be very sensitive, but what are we doing to acknowledge that for those students, the hard time that they're going through, versus just, I don't want to say brushing it under the rug, but it kind of feels like the tone of what was just put out there kind of is. It's a pretty big thing in life for our students to deal with, for staff. I mean, we just lost one of our principals, and I think our staff was so shaken. But even more so that it wasn't acknowledged.
Well, this is not about not acknowledging a death at all. What this is about is how do we, as a school, someone has died, you can acknowledge that, but having a funeral service at the school, having a memorial at the school, it's different, right? Because that's not the place. School is for learning. How we support students when there's been a death, we do acknowledge that. We have our crisis team that comes in. We work with students. We make referrals as needed. We work with families. We provide guidance and support, even when there's been death by suicide. And I recall a case this year, where we met with the family and talked with them about, what they could do and how they could honor their loved ones. So this is not at all about ignoring death. You don't want to ignore it, and you're right, because our kids are vulnerable. But what we see in terms of, in essence, bringing in, again, funeral, memorial, or having those kinds of things that are more appropriate for community use outside into a school, school becomes associated with that. And remember, if we're talking about the safety, psychological safety of all folks, I might be a student that have no, relationship to the person or whatever, so now that's exposed to me. So we don't ignore the deaf at all. That is why we have a crisis team. That is why we have the resources and support to do that for families, for students. Our employee wellness support program in HR provides support and guidance for our staff as well that have met those needs. So we have things in place to meet those needs, even at the time of the crisis and following the crisis. So this policy does not at all say we will ignore it at all. That is not what the intention is here.
In fact, memorials are allowed, correct? They're just limited to 3 days.
Well, we
And there's-
we don't even call them memorials.
Okay.
So what happens sometimes there's what we say spontaneous memorials,
Yeah,
right?
spontaneous
So there might be a death. And people do what people do because we're human, right? And we feel those things. So we want to write letters, or we'll have cards we don't have lockers anymore, I'm dating myself, but at the seat or whatever, right? And we can say that's fine. What we also say, though, we need to have a time limit on that. We can't have it linger. So we're proposing it's there for a certain amount of time. The school staff will then look through it to make sure there's nothing inappropriate, and they can turn that then over to the family. Right, so those things are spontaneous. What you don't want to have happen, and I've had it happen in the previous district, is that, somebody in the football team has died, and now we have a memorial service on the football field, and now we're left with kids in the hallway that are crying, and there's this contagion. So it's not about not acknowledging the death. It's how do we, within the confinement of school, acknowledge and then make sure that whatever is done is appropriate and not causing any further harm, psychological harm.
I'm gonna, we're gonna have to bring this back because I don't want to delay our meeting out there, but I do want to get, if you'll save your other questions for when it comes back. Yes, Ms. Whitson.
I just wanted to ask one thing, and acknowledging that we'll come back and talk about this. This is not, we have not done a conversation across the entire district, but I have had 2 students who have been a part of a school that has lost a peer this year that has reviewed, because I have been working with them throughout the year, they have reviewed the policy, and they are in alignment with the fact that they think that we need to be sensitive and we need to be equitable across the board. It's interesting, the day that their peer passed away, the very same day we had a first grader pass away. So one student died of a very tragic incident. The other student also died of a tragic incident, and the parents, the families wanted to handle those totally differently. So and just as an example, we have had some feedback from students as well, so I want to share.
Ms. Gordon.
That was going to be my question. I actually have a question and a comment, but given that it's going to be brought back, I'll save my comment. But my question was going to be about what efforts were made to involve others and maybe families, students, staff who have gone through situations like this. And while I can respect that I think that's great, but again, they are only 2 students. And so I guess my question is a question and a comment. I would like to see how we are engaging other people outside on this policy, because I can agree it is very heavy, but at the same time I understand what Ms. Caulfield's sentiments are, and I'll just leave it at that.
We have taken it also to the Division of Principals. So the Division of Principals has seen it and reviewed it, provided feedback, and shared it amongst their peers. So we have a Student Support Services Committee that reviewed it. They shared it with the board as well. So that has occurred as well.
And I think it has happened with senior leadership as well.
Yes.
Again, I can appreciate all of that, but again, I have not heard families at all.
Yes, you're correct.
Okay.
When you do come back to see us, if you would bring some more information about industry standard things, I'd like to hear.
We searched, there's no industry standard. I can bring you references The current training program that we use for school crisis and response, that is pretty much the gold standard in terms of recommendations for memorial policies. We've looked at some other states, and there's nothing here in North Carolina about policies, but there's all those guidance documents. I can certainly share those
That would
as
be
well.
great. Thank you so much. Dr. Crane, let's bring this back in August, and that leads me to my last comment. If you all actually opened the agenda for today, you would have seen at the bottom it said next policy meeting, question mark. So I have talked to Ms. Allen and Chair Swanson. We are going to have our next policy meeting on August 25th at 1 p.m. and that's basically the same cycle that we've been on, but we will not meet in July. Thank you, staff, and thank you again, board members, for making this work today. I really appreciate it. We're adjourned.